Yo, welcome back to another Mailbag Monday by the Money Matters podcast. I am your host, Jack, and I am joined by my trusty colleagues, my trusty co-hosts, my dad, Bill, my chief of staff, Dylan. Gentlemen, how are we?
Excellent. Hi, Jack. Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Bill. Feeling great. Feeling great. Let's get into it.
You both are wearing the new Strike merch, the hoodie and the shirt. I'm wearing a Kendrick Lamar hoodie to support the current rap beef, but everyone looks good, swagged out per usual. Okay, before we get into it, we don't have any sponsors. We've been in this game for over a decade. We're here to shoot the shit with you guys. We release this episode every Monday at night, so you can listen to it when you're at the gym, on your way home from work, while you're eating dinner. It's casual, but more importantly, it's honest, it's truthful, it's real, it's authentic, it's culture, in my opinion. So no one influences our opinions. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to talk and hang and shoot the shit. With that, I think we hop right into our dollar bill segment. So my dad's name is Bill. He's been in financial markets for over 40 years. He's the best Bitcoin trader I've ever seen in my life. He's been doing it for 11 years. And to open up every episode, he gives his market analysis and just overall thoughts on BTC USD trading pair. What do you think, Dad? What's going on? Hold on, before you answer, we're recording this on Sunday, May 5th at around 12:30 p.m. Central Time here in Chicago. And Bitcoin is trading at $64,426.96.
You guys are going to get tired of hearing me saying the same thing, but yeah, start where we start. Where was it 3 months ago? Where was it 3 months before that, right? It's going higher. Believe it or not, as you know, I've never made a winning real estate investment in my life. The house you grew up in, we owned for 20 years. Put an addition on it and still didn't make any money on it. But now real estate is up, gold is up, Bitcoin is really up. I think the one thing that all those markets, different supply demand fundamentals, all share in common is the liquidity. I think if you're a policymaker heading into an election year with the amount of insolvency in the system, I think in the battle of inflation versus solvency, you guys, I think policymakers are gonna have to let price inflation leak out a little bit. Fixed assets are gonna have a bid then, and which one? Where do you want to go? Real estate, gold, Bitcoin just has a stronger story than any of them. Like I said, if you're looking for scarcity, I just Googled how much gold is there in the world, and really the answer comes back as an estimate. There's an estimate for how much there is and an estimate for how much we've already dug up. Is that where y'all want to store value? Whereas Bitcoin, there is, as you know, 19,730,250 last time I looked, right? So I mean, it's a far stronger store of value argument. I'm trading all assets from the long side with a focus on Bitcoin. You guys are gonna get tired of hearing me say that, but right, you want to throw in the fact that it's also an election year. Get long, get paid. Don't make speculation any harder than it has to be, right? A lot of people, right, are gonna drill into metrics, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just think for this market, just a step back and an overview, it really does look like we are inflating all the assets right now. And that begs the question of when that's going to end. And then, my opinion, I think there's plenty of gold in the world. The only thing keeping us from digging up more and more gold is all you got to do is get the price of it high enough. And I think if the liquidity situation turns, that gold would be the first one. Gold would be the canary in the coal mine. And if gold falls below, say, the big round number, 2,000, I would reassess my buy all, buy everything stance towards these markets. But other than that, I'm trading from alongside and having a good year. And like I said, I haven't even logged into my account. This is my kind of year. You're right. You're up on real estate, stocks, Bitcoin, gold. Get long, get paid.
Get long, get paid. Buy and hold. Buy in May and go away.
I know. I do. I'm a broken record, but
no, I don't think.
Sometimes the hardest thing to do is sit on your hands, right? I should be doing something, right? This is the big market everybody's talking about. This is a post-halving Bitcoin market. Shouldn't I be doing something? Nah, I haven't done it. I'm having a great year and I haven't logged in.
Yeah. You want to be entertaining or you want to be right? There you go. We choose to be right on this podcast. Fuck your entertainment. I agree, and I kind of want to talk more about it. So just for the Bitcoiners listening, I know we've had the Wasabi wallet shut down. Roger Ver's been arrested. Saylor launched a new thing at his conference. Coinbase integrated Lightning. Craig Wright dropped his case against HODLNOT. Shout out HODLNOT. Fuck Craig Wright. Congratulations, brother. We all love and care about you. But I think we should talk about Bitcoin, where it is in the market cycle, the Fed meeting. We plead and ask to you guys to ask us questions. If you ever want us to talk about a specific topic, we tweet it out once a week, and we expect you guys to respond. And if you don't, I get to make the agenda. And I don't really want to talk about Roger Ver. Although I don't know.
When you say congratulations, HODLNOT, I swear to God, I think the sun came out. Like everybody just feels a little better.
Good. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
the world is healing. Yeah. The world is healing. Yeah. So I don't think we got any specific questions about Coinbase and Lightning. I love open networks win. I love that they added it. We didn't get any questions about anything really. I don't want to talk about. I don't like anyone getting arrested. I've said that. I don't believe in locking humans in boxes and depriving them of things that make us who we are. But I don't want to talk about Roger Ver. So anyway, I'm going to, and if you are a listener, just ask us questions. You know, I hope we're scratching your itch. And if we're not, you just let us know and tell us what you want us to talk about. But given that there weren't too many topic related suggestions for us, we just had a Fed meeting. Jerome Powell, Jay Powell. And I'm curious, Dad, to pick your brain about the market's reaction to that and where we are in the market cycle and the whole just own not dollars. Also, the danger of who gets to benefit from that. Obviously, there's a part of America that's really good at owning assets because they have a lot of wealth. But the people that are living paycheck to paycheck, if you're 25 years old living in Chicago right now, assets are going to run away from you and you're not going to be able to muster up the wealth to be part of the transfer into assets. And so you're creating a really big wealth gap in the country, really big wealth gap in the world. I think 10% of America owns 95% of the wealth. Want to get into all of that. My first question, before we hit record, I was saying, well, Bitcoin seemed to react rather aggressively with the rest of the markets when the Fed said they didn't want to cut interest rates. The Fed said inflation's not down to 2%. In fact, it's not even close. In fact, it might be rising again. There's clearly hidden liquidity somewhere. They may not be, quote unquote, printing money, but inflation's still going up. Assets are still going up. So they're injecting liquidity somehow. And Bitcoin seemed to react sharply in that the Fed was going to be a tough guy, not cut rates, and continue to, in theory, protect the dollar and strengthen it against your groceries. But then out of nowhere, it seemed to rebound right back into the $64,000, $65,000 range as if it called bullshit. And Bitcoin's usually the best expression of truth, the best expression of dollar debasement. And so if Bitcoin's telling us anything, is that the Fed tried to intimidate everyone, but Bitcoin calls bullshit and says, fuck you, you guys are still injecting liquidity, you're full of shit. What's your read on Bitcoin post-Fed meeting? Does it matter that they're cutting rates? Do we need to listen to
if they were to cut rates? Yes, that would be a wonderful day. Yeah, no, I think. Well, I mean, first things first. Yes, do the 8 to 10 to 12 regional unelected economists that nobody, right, who released their minutes 6 weeks after, you know, and set our monetary policy, are they leaning more towards addressing solvency risks or inflation risks? Or, you know, I mean, that's really the, like, first thing first is Bitcoin's monetary policy is just such a breath of fresh air, right? Instead of trying to read tea leaves with what these guys are up to. And I think, I mean, I would not want that job, but if I had it, I would take the insolvency risk more seriously than I would take the inflation risk. Inflation seems to get a life of its own in double digits, but if you can keep it under 10, 7, 8, 9%, if I were setting policy around here, I would be scared to death about the insolvency risk. Bank lines are just not a good look. I'd rather have you guys paying 10% more for your groceries than you guys standing in a line around a bank, trying to figure out who's still solvent. I mean, that's a terrifying thing. Financial crisis with no safety net under it, and I think the Fed has learned that. I don't think they are going to be Volckerish when it comes to inflation. I think they're going to let it go, kind of to right double digits. You got to address, but where are we now with inflation, with CPI index? What do we got? 6, 7, 8%. Supply chains, Putin. Gosh, we're running out of wheat. Whatever. I think as long as they keep it there, I think we're still safe. Trading from the long side. I do not think they will tighten to address that.
I agree, especially because then another bank was taken over recently by, was it FDIC? It was the First Republic Bank was officially seized and taken over and shut down. Of course, nobody knows anything about that dog shit bank until they fail, and the failure just tells all of us that there aren't enough banking reserves in the system, and so we've
hard to imagine failing with a bank, right? I mean, you pretty much have a guarantee. I don't know what you have to do, right, in order to fail, right? It's got to be, whatever malinvestment. Yeah, but no, you're right. Another bank seizure is just another argument for hard assets.
Yeah. So let me try and explain what the Fed is trying to do here. So another bank failure means there's clearly not enough bank reserves in the system. The reason for that is primarily because they all bought long duration bonds, and these instruments are underwater for the first time in a very long time. So this isn't a risk that banks have ever needed to model for. Bonds are pitched as this risk-free thing that you don't need to think twice about. If you have excess capital, you give it to the US government, and it's as good as gold. That's where that phrase came from. It's as good as gold, a US bond. Now that's not true anymore. So all of our deposits were taken in by banks, used to purchase bonds. Those bonds are worth less than when we initially deposited. So that's why when we go to withdraw our money at the bank, our money's not there anymore. So on one side, there's not enough banking reserves in the system. The only way to make sure the banks don't fail is if the US government prints the money that the banks are missing and gives it to them. Now that, on the other side, causes the inflation that we're facing. And so the everyday person who may not totally understand what's going on is really mad at Joe Biden and really mad at the Biden administration, really mad at the Federal Reserve because their groceries are getting more expensive and their electricity bill is getting more expensive. Also, inflation doesn't need to be a bad thing. Like, I'm a fan of inflation because I own Bitcoin. Bitcoin's being inflated. Bitcoin's getting a lot more expensive. The real estate we all own is getting a lot more expensive. Right? Gold is getting more expensive. So things that aren't the dollar are getting more expensive. Another way to say that is the dollar is just getting tremendously weaker. And so the Fed is kind of caught in this pickle where they're trying to get Biden reelected and make him not look like an asshole. So they have to somehow ease the narrative of inflation and the fact that he's ruining your lifestyle and ruining your ability to sustain the American dream, because wages, so your income, your salary, isn't keeping up with the rate of inflation, which means you're working as hard as you're working and your life is going backwards. You're getting out of bed, you're commuting to work, you're going to the gym, you're working as hard as you can, you're getting less stuff. So it's to somehow battle that. But if you battle it too hard, all of our banks are going to go under. And so at the end of the day, as my dad points out, you have to pick one. If you're going to save the banks, you're going to inflate everything around us. If you're going to battle inflation, none of our money in our banks are there. And the world's going to end effectively. And so to my dad's point, they have to save the banks. Of course they do. I mean, the whole system is predicated on us depositing in banks lending that money to the government. That's how this whole system works. If they let their banks fail, then the whole thing dies. But they have to do it in a very sneaky way that makes it look like they're fighting inflation. And so what I'm seeing in the market is Bitcoin calling bullshit that they're fighting inflation. Of course they're not, because they can't. If they were to fight inflation, all of our banks would go under. So what Bitcoin's telling me, and like it goes down to 58,000 and everyone's like, holy shit, the Fed's going to be really hard. They're going to battle inflation. They're not done yet. They're not cutting rates. And then Bitcoin bounces right back up to 64,000 as they're injecting liquidity elsewhere. I mean, even interest rates at 5.5% is injecting enough liquidity because all these rich people are getting payouts every single month and probably buying Bitcoin with it, with this 5.5% interest rate. So just for those keeping score at home, that's how it works. And that's the predicament we're in. And when I see Bitcoin trading at 64, 65,000 after that supposedly intimidating big bad boy on the block JPow Fed meeting, Bitcoin's calling bullshit and the rest of the market's calling bullshit. So I don't know if you guys have any comments or anything to add on to that. If not, I personally have some more questions for my dad.
Well, wasn't the latest CPI print 3.5%? Like, why would they hike or reverse rates at that? That's like well within kind of their, I mean, it's a little bit over their target, but it doesn't seem like that's cause to move.
A little bit. It's almost 100% over their target. Their target's 2%.
I feel like they always say it's like 2 or 3%. I don't know. They're kind of flippant about it, I feel like.
Well, they didn't used to be. They are now, because again, it's a mind game. Politicians are marketing officers. They don't actually engineer anything. They don't actually make, executive decisions like an Amazon executive. They're marketers. They're there to get reelected. And the way you get reelected is you make people feel good about themselves and you give them free shit. Nothing's free. There's a cost to bear for everything. So someone's paying for it. But the game is of whack-a-mole, is to convince everyone that you're a good guy. So yes.
Like who picked 2%? I never voted for that. Why not 3? How about 1? I don't know. What about 5? I don't know why that's considered stable. I think stable prices. It's not. They're increasing by 2%, right? So, but the general gist is if you can keep in single digits, that it does not self-reinforce, right? It does not become disruptive, and I don't know, for some reason, an expanding money supply and prices is considered necessary for a growing economy, but you got to keep it under 10%. So what at 7, I think is still fine. I don't think. Well, we haven't gotten a Fed response so far. I don't think you get one right till double digits.
Yeah. Well, I'll actually use this to explain another thing. 2% was thought to be fine because human growth and our ability to produce was greater than 2%, Dylan. So what do I mean by that? If you have a money that's being inflated at 2% a year, and so let's say the dollar or gold, for example, I think gold's inflation rate is around 2% as well. And I think that's where the US government got that from. I have no idea actually, but I assume, but let's use gold, for example. Let's be easy on the dollar for now. Gold is inflating at 2% a year, so 2% more supply is found compared to the existing stockpile that is issued today. And that means that all of the shit around you is going to get 2% more expensive in theory if it was all mapped perfectly a year. The reason that was okay, though, is because we as humans were reproducing with each other and coming up with technologies like the internet and the car and electricity, and we were producing more than 2%. So yes, your money's losing 2%, but being human and being part of society is netting you 5%, right? Because think about it. How much money did you have to expend on watching movies before Netflix. Netflix was such a great innovation that now watching every movie that ever comes out costs you $7 a month. We're going to one movie in town not only costs you $17 to see the movie, but it costs you gas money to get there. It costs you 2 hours of your time. And so the time and energy expended on watching movies was greatly reduced. And that was because of innovation. So if you had a money that was relatively hard, so relatively hard to produce, then being human was able to outgrow the inflation of the money. And so as long as it's not, to my dad's point, 10%, then humanity should outpace a money that's relatively hard. And so the Fed's job has been to keep the dollar relatively hard. And a way that I like to realize that is in debt to GDP. That's what that is how much is the government borrowing from our future in the form of money versus the growth that we're experiencing as humanity to pay that back. Because in theory, the government, if the government was perfect, they'd say, humans are kicking ass. We're the government. We're like the CEO of this startup called humanity, or the startup called America. And we know that where we need more investment, we need more universities, we need more computer science classes, we need more railroads or highways over here so that humans can grow in this way and we can meet the demand this way. And so we're going to borrow money, which is borrowing the time and energy of society, to support more growth from this humans, so that the growth can outpace the money and pay it back forward. And we can keep humanity growing and innovating and building new technologies and educating. And what if every human, no matter how rich or poor their ethnicity, had education? Then in theory, everyone's an innovator, everyone's a startup founder, everyone's building stuff, right? And so that we can outpace the money that we're using. Now, in practicality, governments are selfish, governments are stupid, and that isn't that easy to grow all the time. Like every empire usually has low-hanging productivity gains, maybe after a war. So for America, after World War II, there were really easy ways to be productive and to grow. But then when the world gets back on your feet, all of a sudden you're borrowing trillions of dollars to go to war and fund Ukraine. And you're like, well, how is that going to make us grow? How are we going to pay that back? And so when I see a global debt to GDP ratio of 360%, it means we're borrowing so much and we're not growing enough to pay it back. So now all of a sudden the inflation rate is too high because we're not, as humans, producing enough stuff to make it worth it. Does that make sense? Now you take something like Bitcoin, for example. What is Bitcoin's inflation rate? It's the only money ever that has zero. So it's actually perfect at protecting your time and energy because nobody can debase it. So in theory, like if you were to hold gold and humans don't produce anything new and we don't grow at all, you'd get 2% less groceries every year, 2% less housing every year, right? Does that make sense? And the fact that holding gold was actually relatively sound is because humans are innovative and we all create things before we die, and we reproduce new peoples before we die so that they can create things. Bitcoin's actually so hard that if you own Bitcoin and humans don't produce anything new, you'll get the same amount of groceries. You'll get the same amount, right? So Bitcoin allows you to be so pro-human that you just are a net benefiter of everything anyone else creates in the world. Anything that anyone else creates, you're just net profit. You're never operating at a loss. You're never operating in the red. But that's how all of this works. And a government, with government bonds, what they're doing is they're borrowing from society. And in theory, you're electing someone that's good at allocating your capital, your borrowed money, your borrowed time and energy, so that they can build the right highways and they can invest in the right universities and they can write the right policies to make sure we're all growing. The problem is the human population is going down. The problem is we're going to more wars. There's a lot of problems that aren't resulting in growth. There's less people around to produce all this stuff and consume all this stuff. And so now you have a really serious problem where there's way too much money in the system. They've borrowed way too much. And the only way out is to print more money. So anyway, that's why the inflation rate matters. So why not 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%? You're just burdening all of us to produce more stuff, have more kids, buy more groceries. But it's a huge issue because we're already on the other side. People are already having less kids, buying less groceries, getting less housing because they bang the money up so bad. We're in just such a bad predicament. So that's why when you hear people in this doomsday scenario of like, it's all going to fall apart, that's why it's going to fall apart. you now have a society that can't afford to live in 360% debt to GDP. So they're not having 10 kids. Right now, what the government would need is for AI and robots to have some surprising growth that gets us out of this 360% hole. But everyone right now is like, I can't afford a house. I'm going to rent a tiny little shoebox in New York City. I can't afford grass-fed steak. I'm going to eat, McDonald's. I can't afford the groceries. I can't afford a car. I can't afford gas. I can't afford a nice place. I can't afford a vacation. So they're consuming less and less and less stuff, which is less and less and less growth, which makes the money printing more and more violent. And it's like a cyclical thing. And so that you can get out by just owning Bitcoin. There's no inflation to Bitcoin.
No, I think, right. The really the monetary landmarks of the, the past of the current period, I think are pretty clear that in response to a pandemic and the damage done to the economy, the government decided to mail out stimulus checks. That is, I've never seen anything like that before, right? That is really, that's your first wake-up call. The price of gold is another wake-up call. And what's their response now? What are the ideas they're floating? Not that they're actually going to do this, but they're considering doubling the capital gains, and also doubling capital gains tax, and also taxing open trade equity. So you're really looking to disincent capital formation, right? I mean, as your government telling you, I guess, to go spend, because if you invest in it, we're going to take, and you invest well, we're going to take it before you even sell it, right? Before you P&S it. Yep. I just think that's all you need to know, guys. They're going to tag, if the polls are going the wrong way, they print money and mail out stimulus checks. When that doesn't good, they want to start taxing capital formation and driving wealth out of here. I mean, I'll go with my monetary policy. It's taped up to my wall. Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to they want the wealth out of the assets. Another way to think about it, they need you to spend. They're trying to replicate the growth required. One of my favorite quotes ever is, it takes 18 years to make an 18-year-old. There's nothing you could do about it. Because what the government really needs is more people consuming more stuff. They wouldn't be printing you money if there was enough humans running around consuming all the stuff. They printed so much money. We all have an excess of stuff. The reason everyone's going to war right now is because people are pissed off that they aren't buying the goods we're producing. We're pissed. Like, Russia produces a lot of natural goods. China produces goods. America produces goods. Now Africa's producing goods. Now everyone in Latin America is back on their feet and producing raw metals and raw materials. And but who are you selling it to is the problem. So after World War II, it was easy. Everyone was fucking eviscerated. And we had easy productivity gains, king of the world. We could produce whatever we want. Everyone had to buy from us. And then we said, here, you guys produce it. We'll buy on the cheap and we'll export our debt to you. And that's where we are now. But now everyone's producing things and have borrowed so much time and energy and borrowed so much money. And we have all this excess of shit, but we haven't had the growth to back it up. So there aren't enough people to consume all this stuff. And because you borrowed so much time and energy, you inflated everything around us. Now these people can't even afford to fucking own a home. And so the government's saying, you either spend in the economy, but if you own Bitcoin, if you own assets, if you try and protect your time and energy, we're gonna take it from you with unrealized cap gains. Fuck off. But that's the problem. That's the problem. If Biden can fix this problem, if he was able to snap his fingers and grow our population by 25% overnight, then all of a sudden there'd be so many new babies that need diapers and milk and cars and energy and housing, and we'd be consuming and consuming and consuming, and we need to build and build and build and build. But there's not. It takes 18 years to make an 18-year-old. You can't print those. You can print dollars. You can't print those. So that's the problem. That's the problem. And so it's gotten so out of whack that all of a sudden the population's starting to decline instead of go up. Not only is it not going up fast enough, it's declining because people are like, I can't afford 3 kids. I can't afford 4, 5, 6 kids. I can't even afford 1. So people aren't even getting married. That's the problem. So you don't need if you try and self-regulate the money with some old guy that has quarterly meetings, it's a fool's game. The whole point of money is owning the hardest one to make more of, because making more of it takes away from your time and energy, takes away from your groceries. 2% inflation rate means 2% less groceries every single year. So if you can find a money that's harder than that, you should own it, because then you'll get only 1% less groceries every year. If you could find one that's 0, that's Bitcoin. So now no matter what, in principle, in theory, not principle, but it has been in principle. In theory, because I own Bitcoin, no matter what, I get the same amount of everything in my life. But because humans are innovative and build things and governments debase currencies, because I own Bitcoin, I get more shit every year I live. Cheat code. Shout out Peter McCormick's conference.
Yeah, I mean, not to get too personal, but I firmly fall into that camp right now. Like, the room that I'm sitting in is an apartment in Chicago that I rent. I don't think it's necessarily a good time to buy a house, but you know, an ideal house for me is probably a little bit outside of my budget at the moment. And so a kid downstream from that, I mean, there's like zero interest in like bringing a child into the world. I can't, you know, I don't even have a fucking house.
Right. But you have to. So if you think of money as abstracted time and energy, so you work all day and you work all night, and what you get in return for that is money. So it's the market good that represents your time and energy. A cheeseburger represents a meal, right? Gas represents what you put in your car. Money, it represents your time and energy and contributions to the world. The reason people are getting married later in life, the reason people are having less kids, is because it's requiring more time and energy to sustain a lifestyle that's acceptable, right? Like, if they are debasing the currency faster than you can put time into your job, then you can't get married at 21. You're getting married at 31 now, because they're requiring more time and energy out of you to sustain a lifestyle that seems acceptable. So you don't get married at 21 and have 5 kids. You get married at 31 and have 1, and then you get divorced. And that's because the time and energy piece. It's pretty simple. Like, if money's time and energy and they're making it weaker and weaker and weaker, it's going to require more of your time and energy to stack up enough to afford a lifestyle that you're willing to accept. Just a fact. Unless you use a different money. So money is the market good you elect to represent your time and energy. You could pick the dollar if you want. You could pick other things. I pick Bitcoin, right? You pick the money that you want to represent your time and energy.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm looking at this data. The average age of a first-time home buyer was 30 years old in the early 1980s. And by the 2010s, this average age had increased to the mid-30s, mid to late 30s.
Yeah. And then the other problem, and, you know, I don't know how many millennials and Gen Zers listen to this, but the other problem is that as they print more money, they're inflating not only your groceries and your gas, but they're inflating the housing market. They're inflating the Bitcoin market. And so those that own assets are getting exponentially richer just by owning not dollars. Those that can't afford assets yet are getting exponentially poorer because everything's being inflated away. So that's when you get this giant wealth gap where 10% of America owns all the wealth because 10% of America owns all the assets. There's like one guy that owns like a block of Manhattan, but there's 10 million people that will never own a home in New York, right? Or whatever the math is. And so as this continues to perpetuate, you're getting more people living paycheck to paycheck, more people downsizing their homes, more people needing to find a way to budget their grocery shopping. They don't get their favorite dessert or their favorite steak or whatever, their meal planning and shit. And then on the other side, you get more and more concentrated wealth. We're talking about one human being is going to be worth $1 trillion or something. It's like, what? How's that possible? Well, the guy just has a lot of assets. It's like when Jeff Bezos' net worth goes up $10 billion in a week and people are like, you should be using that to feed Africa, you fucking asshole. It's not his fault. He just owns assets and they're printing a lot of money. Like, no one can actually contribute that much time and energy to society in a week. You can't actually produce $10 billion worth of value in a week. You could own assets and they could debase the dollar that much in a week. Yeah, well, it's a rigged game, and I'm not sure these Fed meetings matter anymore, to be honest. But yeah, Bitcoin's a life hack. Time and energy protected. At worst, I break even, right? Because inflation's zero. So at worst, I live through one of the worst periods of humanity where we don't produce, no one has kids, and I break even on my time and energy. At best, I get 10 houses a year owning this shit, right? I get infinite groceries. I get unlimited vacations. That's how I prefer to think about it. So that's why it's just such a no-brainer. Or going back to the dollar bill segment. It's like, I don't mean to bore you guys, but you just buy it, get long, get paid, own it to save your life. It's pretty simple. You know, we could be entertaining.
It's pretty clear about credit bubbles, right? I mean, it spends a couple paragraphs on a white paper about the amount, how banks, treat credit is, is long-term irresponsible. It's either two ways out of, a debt problem, and default's one of them, and it is not an option. So, right, I think the only way is debasement.
Yeah, can I make one more point too, Dylan? On the last thing that's really fucked up from how they do fiat today, printing all this money and wanting to tax your unrealized capital gains, is they're trying to deprive you of saving, right? So they're saying don't save, spend, spend, spend. And if you do save in a house, if you do save in Bitcoin, if you do save in assets, we're going to take it from you. Not only is that obviously unfair and ridiculous, especially when they're debasing the currency, depriving your way of saving is depriving your way of protecting your time and energy in your life effectively. But the other thing is saving is actually the most like pro-human moral thing you can do. Because think about it. If I have gold that's inflating at 2% a year and I save that gold under my mattress, effectively what I'm saying is I believe in all of us to produce more than that, right? I believe in my neighbor. I believe in the other countries around the world. I believe even in my worst enemy that we're going to reproduce children. We're going to raise them well. We're going to innovate. We're going to build amazing tools. We're going to educate each other. We're going to love each other. And we're going to outpace the 2% gold inflation. That's why I'm saving. If I didn't believe that, I'd spend it right now because it's better used now than tomorrow if I wasn't bullish on humanity. But one's ability to save is one's ability to say, I believe in us. And I believe in my neighbor and in my friends and in my family and our ability to create things and innovate and learn and go through it together. That's what saving is. Saving is valuing the future. That's what saving is. It's saying, I believe the future is going to be worth more than today. So that also, it goes down to like, why don't I just go to the beach every single day? Why do I go work really hard? It's because I'm valuing my future more than today. Why don't I eat ice cream every single meal? Because I'll die earlier. I'm valuing my future more than right now. A premium on the future goes down to like why we're all human. Like, why did some dude build a spear to go hunt rather than just like eat leaves all day and sit on his ass? He took his time to figure out how to build the spear because he valued the future, right? And changed, right? So depriving humans of saving is depriving our ability to place a premium on the future and value each other. It's ridiculous. It's like spend, spend, spend right now because tomorrow is going to be worse than today. What an awful society to like manipulate and design. It's disgusting. We want everyone saving because we want everyone invested in believing in each other to support for a better tomorrow. So that's the last part of it. That's just evil, really. And so when people are like, oh, all you Bitcoiners, all you do is sit on it. Yeah, because I believe in Bitcoiners. I'm sitting on it because I believe Bitcoin's tomorrow is better than today. What? Are you a disgusting cuck fiat piece of shit that's encouraging everyone to spend, spend, spend because you don't believe in the tomorrow that Biden's creating? That's why. It's only valuable for you to spend right now. It's the most valuable. It's disgusting and pathetic and gross. So yeah, I hold Bitcoin because I believe in everyone that's working on it. And I believe our tomorrow is going to be better than today. So much so that I couldn't even sell my Bitcoin right now if I wanted to. It's locked up, so held in security and vaults and stuff that's how much I believe in the future. Versus you disgusting, pathetic, manipulative, lying deceiving, gross. It's serious. Like our president right now is proposing bills that say, if you save, I will steal it from you. So you better spend now or your time and energy is mine. That is the most disgusting, pathetic, manipulative attack on society and humanity ever. And what Bitcoiners are saying is, I'm going to save because I believe in humanity and engineering and innovation and all of us. And I value our future more than I value our present. That's good versus evil right there.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing. One thing that I'm interested in is I love narratives. And I'm always curious where their narrative is going. And as time has trended, I feel like, I don't know, I wasn't alive in the 80s, 70s, whatever. Bill, maybe you can opine on this, but being a billionaire was like the goal. It was awesome. If you were a billionaire, that was the goal. Everyone wanted to be that guy. Everyone strived to make that, to achieve that level of wealth. It was, you know, a part of the American dream. And now these people are vilified. I mean, it's disgusting how much money Elon Musk has. It's disgusting what the Ken Griffins of the world are able to acquire, while, you know, and it's their fault that you're poor. It's their fault that you can't own a house because you know, it's so disgustingly disproportionate to what so many people's actual reality is. And that's one interesting data point is because, you know, being a billionaire has gone from something that was heroic and admired to something that's vilified. And then you have these little drops here and there from the WEF, World Economic Forum, of you'll own nothing and be happy. And I feel like that's they're testing these narratives to figure out which one becomes, Iraq doesn't have bad weapons. They have weapons of mass destruction. And at that point, oh my, sound the alarm bell. Let's go to war. I'm in. So I'm waiting for that narrative to sort of reach its final form. And I'm curious to see how society reacts to it. Because again, you know, these proposals, right, are in the direction of, if you are wealthy, we'll tax it, we'll steal it, we'll take it all away from you. If you try to save, we'll take it all away from you. And at the end of that, you'll own nothing, but I promise you it's in your best interest that we have that money and time and energy, and you don't. So, you know, I find the trend line in the narratives to be a little bit interesting, and I'm curious which one sees adoption, because they'll find something. They'll figure something out. Too many people are pissed. I don't know.
No, I love that you guys articulating an economic future is so night and day from us in the 80s, when I was your age. But yeah, your government, in response, right, to the over indebtedness, sent interest rates to zero and kept them there, right? And while floating ideas of increasing taxation on capital creation. I mean, it's a consumerist, right? Kick the can, whatever, 6 months at a time, and get us out of that, get us through the next election cycle. Through, you know, is there disruptions overseas or supply chain or whatever? Just send out enough stimulus checks to keep things moving. But it is not a long-term answer. There's no value being stored right in your bank account right now, and then that's why we're seeing record highs in the bull markets in gold, real estate, cryptocurrency. All really tells the same story. It is a debasement play right now, and like I said, the canary in the coal mine for me would be the gold market. There is no shortage of it. You get the price, and as long as gold still stays at or near within, I'd say, 10% of record highs, then there is still ample liquidity.
I think, Dylan, it's fair that people are upset. It's not fair that it's rich people's fault. But we just talked about it. Like, let's put it this way. If I have a bunch of friends that still haven't bought a bunch of Bitcoin yet, maybe they have a little, maybe they don't have any at all. If the U.S. government goes on to debase the dollar aggressively over the next 12 months, I'm going to be incredibly wealthy. They're going to be pissed, right? Do they have a right to be pissed? Yes, because the US government attacked their savings, attacked their time and energy, attacked their ability to live a life that they've worked their whole life for. Now, is it my fault? Fuck did I do? Protected myself. I owned an asset. I picked what I believe to be the best one in this game of chess. So they have a right to be upset. It's not my fault. It's not Elon Musk's fault. It's not Bezos' fault. The fuck? So on top of that, I think if you just look at like fallen empires, this is the playbook, right? They're an empire because they were the greatest at one point, very easy productivity gains. And then all of a sudden the productivity gains run out, but the elite and the leadership doesn't have the agency and the sense of self and the sense of awareness to realize that the gig is up, and they continue to be greedy and exceed, and then they get abusive, and then they get aggressive, and then they get violent, and then there's enough civil unrest where the Roman Empire falls, right? So I think we're reaching the point of civil unrest where people are going to get like very, very upset and stop believing all of the narratives. But my hope is that it doesn't result in like a civil war. Like we should rally around each other. But I don't know what to say about that. Like, it's very unfair. And we have friends. I mean, listen, maybe this is too personal for a public podcast on YouTube, but we have friends that work really fucking hard and are pissed when Bitcoin goes up because I benefit from that. And they're like, that's not fair. I work so hard just for you to have more time and energy or more housing or more groceries. You didn't do shit. I agree. It's not that fair. But like, newsflash, we're not playing a fair game. There are unelected officials that control your time and energy and how much stuff you get to buy given your life's work. It's never been fair. But like, that's the reality of the situation. So I hope that there's enough love out there where we can say, listen, we're all on the same team and we need to find a way to build an America that we all believe in, or that we thought we were being raised in when we learned the Pledge of Allegiance and when we learned American history. Like, we thought we were growing up in a country that had principles and morals and ethics and democracy very different than what we're learning. And hopefully we don't fight each other. But that's real. Like, there are people I grew up with. They're like, fuck that kid's house, fuck his clothes, fuck his vacations, because all he did was buy Bitcoin. I'm working hard as hell over here. And it's like, it's not my fault. Maybe you buy some too.
That's the important sort of part of the conversation and sort of counteracting that narrative that I find valuable. Like, again, in the scenario that you described, that person is far more likely to displace their anger into jealousy and direct that jealousy / anger at you. It's not, but you didn't, it should be directed at the government. You didn't do anything, and they didn't do anything. The government did.
Well, let me ask you a question though. You guys, you're right. Your generation is looking at a bleaker, right, economic, financial future than my generation did. And you guys are right, looking at, higher inflation, higher taxation, and a harder time, and a housing market that's out of your reach, and retirement's probably out of your reach. So, but let me ask you, when I was your age, we voted for Ronald Reagan. When you people vote for Bernie Sanders, I mean, why do you guys want socialism? Why do young people bend towards let's make more shit free? That's not.
I think it's over. I think that's over. I really do. We'll see how this election pans out, but I think all of the recent years, I don't know anyone that wants a Bernie Sanders or a Biden. The issue is that people don't necessarily love Trump either. So there's not any good candidates, but I don't know anyone that's still advocating for Bernie Sanders or Biden for that matter.
Really? I mean, that's a different story. I think Biden's a competent story, or an age, geriatric, whether he's got, enough left in the tank to do that job is the main narrative there. But I don't think, I I haven't heard anything. You know, there's no, like I said, just night and day compared, right, to the world that I grew up in. You guys are right, kind of like resigned that you're not going to get the family that you're not going to get the home that you can raise a big family in with a backyard that
Well,
much easier in reach.
Yeah, I take offense to that. There's this one guy that makes TikTok and YouTube videos that had been going viral recently, and Barstool was like promoting it. And he makes videos called like 9 to 5. And he's like, living a 9 to 5 life and renting an apartment and having a dog, there's nothing wrong with that. And he's like celebrating this, like, yeah, guess what, guys? I have to wear a button up every day. I go to my 9 to 5. No, I can't like afford a big house or go on vacation, but like I have a dog and I hang out with my dog and I drink light beer every night and I go to work every day and I do accounting. I personally take offense to that. The fact that that's being like celebrated and like heroed around the internet is like disgusting to me. Like everyone should have a dream. Everyone should chase that dream. Like it's foul that people are like, yeah, not everyone can be a founder. Like I'm just gonna be a fucking loser and celebrate it with my other losers on the internet. Like I take extreme offense to that. And so I don't know. And on the other point of like, what's wrong with like the younger generations? How could you ever promote Bernie Sanders? I think you got to just touch the stove. I think at a certain point in our lives, none of this was real. Also, I'm still young enough where there's not that many years where we're like, you know, on your own and like, right? Because even when you're in college or you're in high school and stuff, you don't actually understand what it's like to budget a paycheck, you know? And so I think you touch the stove and you realize like, oh shit, nothing's actually free. Things cost money and our wages aren't keeping up with inflation. And printing money has real effects in the economy and in the market. And inflation is real. That's not a concept that lives strictly in Nigeria. Inflation can happen in New York City too. I think it's just touching the stove, personally. I mean, you've even seen the touch the stove so bad that now I've never seen. So I grew up in Illinois, Chicago, very blue, very blue. I've never seen the level of outrage and just disagreements and battle around war. I grew up, I mean, Obama is from where I grew up, right? So Obama is like, you know, that guy dropped more bombs than Kendrick Lamar, right? That guy's dropped a lot of bombs. And so when I grew up, it was always like war, war, war. We got to go spread democracy by killing people. That was how I grew up in high school. And now, for as blue as Chicago is, there's a lot of, you know, what are we doing? Fighting people and funding all that shit. So I think it's all just touching the stove, getting burned, and realizing, you know, what is printing more money and bombing people going to do for me and my grocery bill and my neighbor? Not a whole lot. Too late though, because all of our banks are underwater, so they got to print the money anyway. So they'll come up with some excuse. I don't know. Maybe there's another COVID around the block or something. Who knows? Something will be the printing money, or else your bank deposits aren't there. Too late. But I'm glad people are maybe coming around to waking up a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, Bill, I think to your point, you know, young people they're looking at a bleak sort of outlook on life, and they're pissed and they're confused. And I think that there's a hilariously sort of ironic point that captures this really well, is you see these like fuck capitalism or end capitalism signs painted on cardboard. Well, where'd that cardboard come from? Amazon, right? They're protesting capitalism on Amazon cardboard. Like, you've missed the plot. And last I checked, I'm not aware of any communist society that offers, you know, free one-day delivery, because the Amazons would never create themselves inside of that system, right? So, you know, I think it's just a tremendous amount of confusion, because the favorable ingenuity that capitalism provides my life. I can Uber around and I can get free grocery, you know, free delivery, one-day groceries and all of these things. People want those things. They enjoy having those things, but they're confused about what the source of the problem actually is. And it's not Jeff Bezos and it's not Amazon. It's the government. It's also not capitalism, for what it's worth. The only reason why anyone has any ability to escape or to graduate or to level up is because of a free market and because of capitalism. And so anyway, I think people are angry, confused, and displacing that anger at the wrong thing. And an evidence of that is writing "fuck capitalism" on Amazon cardboard.
No, I'm we pretty much missed the college. I mean, you guys are all in your 20s now, so I really don't have a direct link to what people are thinking on campuses right now. Is it?
Yeah, well, I think the problem, I can say the problem with the fiat money printing, debasing inflation is it does put us all pinned against each other. It really does, because it's every man for himself. It's a free for all. I can say with confidence, there's not enough room for everyone on the Bitcoin life raft. Let me expand on that. Not that not everyone can own Bitcoin and Bitcoin's not going to scale to all of human. That's not what I'm saying. Do not misquote me. I'm saying that if a lot of people went and ran to Bitcoin to save themselves right now, the price would be 25% higher. And when the price gets 25% higher, it becomes less of a raft for you to save yourself. If you needed $100,000 worth of time and energy saved, well, when Bitcoin was $1, it was a lot better at saving you than when Bitcoin's at $100,000, right? That's the difference between owning 100,000 Bitcoin and 1 Bitcoin. So it's a very small exit door, only 2 at a time. If everyone runs through it, that's when Bitcoin goes up 50% in a quarter. And so it does kind of pin ourselves against each other. It's like, it's every man for himself. They're going to rapidly steal your time and energy and your quality of life and your ability to have family, and every man for himself. And there is competition and stuff in that. It does pin us against each other in a way. It's like a chaotic society running around, everything on fire, trying to find safety. And there's just not that much room in something like Bitcoin before it gets way too big, where, it can still save you. Like I said, worst comes to worst, you break even. That's a good bet. What if I told you every sports bet you at least get your money back, and then anything else you get the upside? That's awesome. Good. So there's a lot more upside left. But yeah, it's unfortunate. You're competing against your neighbor to find safety. Sucks.
I agree.
No notes. Agreed.
Okay. Well, we're running up on just about an hour. Do we want to do any Q&A and wrap it up?
Yeah, let's do it. All righty. We got a question from Almost Heaven. Any good approach to talking to older parents, 70s, about Bitcoin? I've tried bringing up the subject with my dad, but he wasn't really interested. I sent him a book, but he never read it. Is this a lost cause? I wish he understood.
I don't know what side of that equation I'm on. I think I'm the old guy, and you guys tell me, how do you talk to talk to people my age about Bitcoin?
You taught me Bitcoin. I don't know.
Out of this one, I don't know what. I'd say no matter who you are, certainly if you're in anywhere near financial markets, you got to have an open mind towards an alternative, right? I mean, nothing anybody has promised you. Right. I mean, you got kind of the worst of both worlds. Certainly, if you're my age, you're worried about the careers your kids are going to have. You're probably worried about, affording your retirement and, or the solvency of your financial institution. I don't know. Whereas Bitcoin, like I said, if you're worried, tell Grandpa you're worried about the savings you have in the Chase Manhattan. We'll just log in and make sure it's still there. It doesn't work that way. But Bitcoin does. I mean, that is a tangible bearer asset. I'd say I say that's a concept anybody can understand. You don't have to be like cryptography or monetary theory. I mean, this is a tangible bearer asset heading into, I would say, a financial shit show of one side wants to wall the country off, the other side wants to tax capital. I mean, there's no good answers, right, coming from our political leadership. So why not ride the storm out with a bearer asset? I think you can sell that to my generation.
Yeah. My answer, I'll answer differently. I agree with that, though. I could steal that one, but I'll say not necessarily to your parents or anyone in particular, but we've said on this podcast before that Bitcoin is an ego test. It takes a certain amount of humility and vulnerability to say, maybe everything I thought I knew, I don't, and I'm open to learning something new. And I've found, older generations or executives at existing companies like Facebook, it's difficult for them to say, maybe this guy that wears hoodies and hats is onto something. It's like a very difficult thing to do. So I would pitch that digital transformation has been the winner, right? Like in mobile devices, in social networks, in photography, in movies and entertainment, transforming from analog to digital has been the winner. And I would say this is the digital transformation of money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that there's an ego test embedded in here. And I know that I'm younger and I may look different and I may not have been alive long enough, but there's a little bit of humility and at least entertaining the idea. But if you want to be part of the digital transformation of money, like the Netflix to Blockbuster, it could be a big winner.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I'm surprised neither of you said this, but my plan with my parents that worked out pretty well was showing them a price chart.
Right.
A price chart over time and encouraging them to start small. And time in market is the best validator of Bitcoin's ever had. And so 1 year into it, they had a smaller position than they did, a year after that, they got a bigger position, a year after that, a bigger position. And they've been around long enough now to actually take interest in it and understand a bit more about it. But I would start with the price chart and encourage someone to start small. Price chart does all the marketing for you.
Yeah, Tom, if you're 70 years old, your grandparents probably remember, if they were, anywhere near the financial markets, you probably remember the 87 stock market crash. Like, terrifying. We almost all lost our business. What did the Fed do? Boom, like I think we didn't have Twitter, but I think they hit the news wires with a simple statement like, the Fed stands ready in its job as lender of last resort. Like, windows open, right? Boom. And for good reason. Name another crisis. 87, obviously you guys, pandemic or subprime debt, your government's response to all those has been to add liquidity. So if you're 70-year-olds, and you want to head into the last this part of your life, hoping to live on interest income or savings, I don't see any reason why the government wouldn't do what they have done during any economic dislocation in my lifetime and print more money.
Yep.
So I think you really, if you just lay it out like that, it's pretty easy to see that you need hard assets. If they could tax you to solve their problems, they would, but they know as soon as, read my lips, no new taxes, you're gone, right? That was Bush's, if you remember one thing of that election cycle, it was read my lips, no new taxes. And then I strong-armed into raising him, not much, 20 to something to 31 or something, and gone. So politicians know they're going to get voted out if they tax you guys. So this same sneaky alternative is to inflate. But either way, you're heading into the coming years in fiat. Put you at risk.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good way to end it, I guess. Any other questions, though? No? Okay. This was a fun one. I enjoyed this. Thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. We just enjoyed being part of the conversation with you guys. On that note, any, again, comments, questions, other topics you guys want me to talk about Coinbase integrating Lightning? You guys want me to talk about something? You just let us know. But if not, we're going to shoot the shit on a Sunday and release it every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern and talk Bitcoin till we die. All right. With that, I'm going to go watch the second half of this Game 7.
Thanks, guys.
Get long, get paid.
Get long, get paid. Blow up like the world trade, right? Isn't that I don't do rap lyrics. I need I need you guys. My knowledge of rap lyrics is telling you guys to keep it down, but